Hi, I'd like to talk to you about if you're disabled and you use a wheelchair, either the airport's wheelchair or you have your own. It also, I guess, could be generally if you're disabled, but this is more specific. I use a wheelchair. Sometimes I use the airport's wheelchair, but a lot of the times I bring my own wheelchair and I'm flying with it. And this has its own set of problems. If you've joined the disability community or you're in it, but you just really haven't begun to fly, but now you are, you really need to view my video for a while. There's a lot of pitfalls here. It's not that easy. I have to say very honestly, my family could back me up on this. Just about every single time I travel, with maybe one or two exceptions, I have had some issue. The issues, I could write a book. I'm going to start doing some videos of the stories I've had, because when I've been at the airport and I've talked with people, they're like, oh my God, this happened. Because, that's part of the story, I guess, of what happens is sort of a warning to the rest of the disabled community. But there just can be problems, a lot. So what do you got to do when you're going to travel? Okay, some of you travel with somebody, and that's nice, that's wonderful, but you don't have to. The rules in place and the safeties codes, or whatever you want to talk about it, the Americans with Disability Act, but there's also special rules for airlines and the disabled. They're a little bit different. So there is protections for us. And one of them is you do not have to travel with somebody. I travel alone all the time because my children don't live near me. So I get to the airport and then I've got to get from the door of the airport door, I've got to get through ticketing and everything. And if you do it with somebody, that's fine. But even if you're going to go with somebody, I think you need to still listen to this. This is some of the rights you have and maybe how you should approach it. First of all, when you make your reservation, make it any way you want to. You can tell them anything you want to about your restrictions and your wheelchair. You can tell them that you need a wheelchair. When you get to the airport, you can tell them you're bringing your own. But even if you've done that, hang up from that call and go back into the same airline and ask for the accessibility desk or the disability desk. There's a separate entity that deals with the disabled and traveling. And you need to always back up, call that and talk about the reservation you just made and the accommodations that you need, just to make sure that they've heard it and somebody puts it into your computer profile. That doesn't mean it's going to get there. I can't tell you how many times I've done it and I get there and the airport doesn't know anything about what I've said. But if you do it twice, you're protected a little bit better. And you can write down when you did it so you know that you did. And sometimes I even call the day before I fly to that same accessibility desk and I ask them, or even I just call reservations and say, what do you have down there for me? What accommodations did you get put in there? Just so they're there. And do you need, and then what are we talking about? Well, and remember, just because you've got somebody with you doesn't mean you can't get other help from the airline. And by the way, these are not the airport. The airport has nothing to do with this. Each airline is responsible. What are they responsible for? They're responsible for helping you from the curb, when you pull up at the airport, from right there, all the way through the airport, through the ticketing, through TSA, up to the gate, into the plane, and then off the plane, to baggage, and back to the curb. I hope you really followed me. So it's curb to curb. They can't abandon you in the middle of that. Well, I get abandoned, but I'm saying that's your protection. That is there. But some people don't know it. I didn't know it till I started doing some research. So just know that that's where they have to help you, not the airport, but the airline. Now, sometimes the airline subcontracts the transportation part of this, which is curb to plane, from plane to curb, to another entity. That's fine, but if there's a problem, you have to go to the airline and tell them what the problem is. You may have to talk to both, the transportation organization and the actual airline, but it's the airline that's responsible for helping you. They can subcontract it, but that is their responsibility, and that's who you complain to. You would ask for a supervisor for that airline to help you. because you tell them, that's who's responsible. So think about this. You are going to make this reservation. Now, when you want their wheelchair, okay, somehow, think about it, it has to come out to the curb. Or if you've got your own chair, you take it out and you've got to somehow get right into the airport and go through everything you need. Well, if I'm alone, who's going to help me do that? So think about this. I pull up in front of United at LAX, let's say, and I know what terminal that is. I know where I have to go. But how does the airline know I'm there? Think about it. They're responsible for me from curbside. But how do they know you're there? You can't wave, right? I once had, there's people called CROs, C-R-O, and they're crisis people who help you. They're the people that are supposed to help intervene. But the training and what everybody thinks they're supposed to do is kind of a little bit iffy right now. But how does the people that are at the ticket area inside the airport know you're there? Well, I had somebody tell me one time when I called and I said, what do? I called before I even left. I talked to the accessibility desk, and that's usually a CRO, that, well, how do I let you know? And they said, well, just go over to there's phones. And I said, but where are those phones? Well, they're probably located on the wall of the airport as you go in. Well, if you're disabled and you don't walk, how do you get to that phone? And what if it's too high? You can't reach it. Well, then another one, they say, well, you talk to an airport person as you pull up. Well, after COVID, we don't have sky caps anymore. And if there are people taking in luggage, they're not there to leave the luggage area and come help you. It's a transportation person that needs to come out to the curb and help you. And you need to do that. So what they tell you to do, I do it as I'm pulling up. Let's say you're at the airport and you're like 3 or 4 minutes from actually getting to the actual door of your airline. Call the accessibility desk at your airline, or just call the airline number, that customer service number available, and tell them that you're a disabled person arriving at the airport at that place, and you would like a transportation person to come help you with your wheelchair or bring you a wheelchair. So call it a little ahead as you're just about to pull in, and then you can wait there. They're not going to make you go. Put your handicap placard up or whatever, and then they will come out to help you. Now, you may have to make that call more than once. You're going to remember, call your airline. If it's American or United or Southwest, you call their customer service number. Now, you can ask for the accessibility desk if you want to, and you say, I'm here at the airport. I need transportation to come help me. Then you wait, and somebody will come out. Now, the problem that I'm finding is when I have my own chair, and by the way, my chair is self-propelled, it's an electric one, they think I don't need their help. They see it, they say, oh, well, you don't need me to push you anywhere. But I do need help with my luggage. I need help with a lot of things. I say, no, I still need you to help me. It's just not pushing my chair. Now, I could turn my chair off and put it on manual, and they could push me, and I have done that at one time because they didn't seem to get it. Anyway, so they're supposed to help you go up to the ticketing or wherever they help you. My hands don't work very well, so sometimes they help me do that. They put my luggage in that I'm going to put in. And right here, I want to tell you something. When they talk about checking in your luggage, they'll tell you can have one or you pay for all of them or whatever it is. You can always bring any medical equipment, like if you want to have a walker, that can be put into baggage. You don't have to pay for that. Let's say that you wanted to use their wheelchair, but you want to check your wheelchair. Some of them are in cases or covers. You can do that. That's free. Or you are allowed to have a medical bag. I have a bag. It's like a duffel, a small duffel, and I have purchased online a medical tag that says this is medical equipment, and I have it on that. It's soft-sided. Now, what can you put in there? Everything that's associated with your disability. And you say, well, I don't have much. Well, maybe you do. What if you have a CPAP? I hope I'm saying that right. CPAP, that breathing device. Well, you can put that in there. That gives you a nice, safe place to put it, and that can go for free. What else can go in there? Well, let's say you're incontinent and you use pads, and that's just part of your disability. You're getting older. You don't have to put that in your suitcase. You can put that in the disability bag because you need those pads as part. All of your medications can go in there. That's part of your disability. If you have to have, like I sometimes have to have like almost like a sleeping bag cover that goes up over my legs. I put that in there. I put my incontinent pads. I put all of my medications. I put extra socks that I have to have on the, if I need them, because I have Raynaud syndrome. So I need that to keep my extremity. So that will go. Anything that you can associate with your disability. Extra batteries for my chair I can put in there. I have to tell them it's in there, of course. My battery charger goes in there. It doesn't have to go in my luggage. A collapsible cane absolutely can go in there. If I have to have masks, I put those masks go in there. Anything that is associated with any part of your body that is part of a disability can go in. Extra pairs of underpants. If you get them wet, you're going to have to change. I can even put one extra pair of clothes in case I should leak under myself. Now, not my luggage. You got to put most of your clothes in your luggage. This is what's associated with your disability. But that can really save a lot of your luggage area, and that never can be charged. Now, I guess they can look in at it, but I've never been asked that. And remember, no one can ask you what's wrong with you. They cannot ask you to prove your disability that way. They cannot ask you what's wrong with you. Absolutely cannot. Or why are you not traveling with somebody? Those kinds of things. No, they absolutely cannot do that. I'm not saying they won't. I'm just saying legally they can't ask you that. Now, I brought my tag and now it's possible they could inspect my disability bag to prove that I haven't, put other stuff in it. Well, and I'm honest about it, so I don't mind that they do. I put a lot, but remember, there's many things that are associated with your disability. Or just getting older. Getting older is part of a disability. And that's what can be there. But then they can inspect that, but that gives you a lot of extra room. So then when you go up to them, you can either check that or you can have that put on the plane. Sometimes, if you've got you can decide what that's going to be. And then you're going to go over through TSA. They help you go through TSA. I can no longer walk through the screening. So my wheelchair and I go together. Well, they help me. They take all my stuff, put it on that conveyor belt for me or whatever that is as you're going through, because I can't do that. Or I might have to have help taking off my jacket. Now, after a certain age, you don't have to take your shoes off anymore. Remember that. Getting older has a little perk there, right? A little perk. So then you're going to go through TSA. They're going to help you. And then you're going to proceed up to the gate. Now, they can maybe help you use the restroom. And then you can, go to the gate. Excuse me. You can go to the gate. And then you have to if you've got a wheelchair, you've got to recheck it in, usually there. Sometimes, every airline does it differently, but sometimes you've got to check your wheelchair in at the gate. Now, they're not supposed to just leave you. They're supposed to come and check with you if you're alone every 20 minutes to see that you're okay. That doesn't always happen, but they're supposed to. Then they're going to help you get onto the plane. You tell them whether you can walk on after you get to the door. And then you're in your seat. And then the plane lands. Now, if you've got a wheelchair, you've got to wait. You're going to be the last person off. And then, but I'm going to tell you something. Don't get off that plane until they assure you there is an attendant, a transportation person with a chair, or your chair is outside the plane. Because once you get off, you're not going to be able to get back on again. And if it's not there, you're going to have to stand. I can't stand. I've learned my lesson. They've done that to me. I go and I walk up to the front of the plane if I'm not already sitting in the front, and I wait and I say, when you show me a wheelchair's there, I will get off the plane. And in my little stories I can tell, there's a reason for that. But you're going to be first person on the plane, last person off. Check your wheelchair. If you brought your own, make sure it isn't damaged. And they're much more cognizant now of damaging your wheelchair. You want to take care of it right then and there. Check it right then and there. It's nice if you take pictures of it before you get on the plane. I should have mentioned it. Take pictures of that, because I've never had mine damaged. I'm lucky. I don't know. Most people have that travel with wheelchairs. I've heard stories. But and then when you get down, they should have somebody to help you get through baggage. They think, well, I've got a wheelchair that's automatic. I can take myself to baggage. How am I going to take my luggage off the luggage turntable? I can't do that. I'm not strong enough. And I need to be taken to the curbside where whoever's going to pick me up is waiting. They don't have to come in and get me. Remember, to the curb, arriving and leaving. That's your right. So that's some of my tips for if you're going to be traveling. Other disabilities I don't have, so I don't know if I can address them, except that there is an accessibility desk that you can ask for each airline. You can find out what they can do for you. And a disability bag is something I think you've forgotten about in a way. But if this can help you at all, I certainly hope so. Thanks. So let's say things go wrong. You don't have any help. Nobody comes in a timely manner to come and get you at the curbside when you arrive. Or they tell you things that aren't true. Or they're giving you trouble about your equipment or the wheelchair. Or they don't take you off the plane and help you, or whatever that goes wrong, goes wrong. Now, if you're in the middle of it and you've got to get going, you have to stop right then and there and ask for a supervisor. You can ask for a supervisor, or you can ask for a CRO, a complaint resolution officer. They're available 24/7 to you. Now, they may be on the phone. They're not always in the airline, but they're the complaint official that you can go to, or first start off with just a supervisor. And here's a warning right now. Be sure that you go to the airline. If you're going to travel with a wheelchair or anything, go early. Always go early so you have time to solve any problems that might happen. So I go so early that I can stop right in the middle of the problem and say, I want to speak to your supervisor or a CRO, and I stop right there. If people are telling me things that don't make sense, if somebody asks me what's wrong with me, I stop right there. I have, to date, only had one supervisor, live one, at the airport that was not gracious. I've only had one. The problems go with the subcontractors of transportation who don't know the laws, or the actual employees who are not trained sufficiently. Now, when I've talked to CROs online, on the phone, I've gotten different responses as to what their duties are. That's different. But when I've asked for a supervisor, then usually they're charming and they want to help you, because they get in a lot of trouble when they don't help the disabled. So right when this thing happens, don't be a shy little person that, I don't want to cause any complaints. If it's going wrong, deal with it right then and there. And be nice. These are employees, they have feelings. Maybe they don't mean to do this. So I always come on low key. And I say, look, this is what's happening to me. Can I please, once you get to supervisor, talking to the regular employees, usually, no, you've got to go up higher. This is what's happening. I'm disabled. I know that I have to have help from curbside to curbside. Here's what's broken down. How can you help me? Now, you don't do this at TSA, because they don't do that there. I just let that go. You've got to keep that low. If it's really bad, you can finish it and then go to a complaint afterwards with TSA. I'm just talking about the actual airline that you're traveling with. TSA is not your airline. That's security. And that's a whole different thing about pat downs and all that. I'll have to do a separate video about that. This is just what you do curbside to curbside. So then, and if not, if you get off the plane and it's done, you can still call the disability desk or accessibility desk and talk about what went wrong. But if you need help right then and there, ask for it. And that's so important, because if we don't make our rights, have them do what we have, we're going to lose them. And you can be nice about it. Nobody has to yell. Nobody has to do any of that. But you have to be firm. No, I don't have to travel with somebody. I can travel alone. No, I do get to do this when they tell you you can't. And remember, there's two rules. One for the airline for traveling, and also the Americans with Disability. But Americans with Disability, is still enacted for you, but the airlines have another set. They're actually better in a lot of respects. And so this is what you want to know about. These are your rights. And believe me, the more you travel as a disabled person, you're going to find out that things will happen. So you have to stop then and there. So what's the key? Always arrive early. Early. So you have time to solve these problems. If you get there just beforehand, you're not going to, and remember, when you're traveling with a disability, everything takes longer. Yes, you're going to get on the plane first, but that doesn't mean there's not going to be problems. So that's what I'm telling you about what you do in a crisis. This is what you're going to do. And of course, if your chair is damaged, they're really sensitive about that right now. They have to let you use, by the way, I understood that the new law is you can have your own repair person. You don't have to use the airlines. And that's important if you have a very expensive chair that has a lot of things changed about it. You can't just go and get another one in a store like I can, but a lot of people can't if you have to replace it. And another thing is a clue is when you are in the plane and you're going to deplane and they don't have your chair available or it's broken or whatever it is, You wait until they solve the problem by staying in the plane. They can say, oh, we got to take off. We have to have this plane. You got to leave. Well, if you can't walk, you can't walk. They can't suddenly say you're going to walk to make them have it easier. You say, well, get me a wheelchair with transportation, and then I will get off. But I'm not going to. I heard there was an a news program that talked about a gentleman who crawled off a plane landing in Las Vegas because he was MS, I think, or something like that, or cerebral palsy, and he literally could not walk. And they didn't have a chair for him. Whatever happened is, I don't know. And he and his wife, he crawled down the aisle and off the plane. Don't you ever do that? Oh my goodness, that is so horrible. You don't have to do that. You say, no, I'm not going to leave this seat until you do something to help me with a wheelchair. They can get one. But if you try to struggle, once you get outside that plane, they're done helping you. They got you out of the plane. You can't go back on. So the people on the plane are done. But when you're on the plane, I stopped at the plane for 45 minutes from leaving because they didn't have a chair for me. And I wasn't leaving that. Now, let's say, what if they said to you, well, you're going to get arrested? Well, what do you care? Let them arrest you. Why would they arrest you? But they could say they would. Well, say, thank you. If you bring some police officers here, they're going to help me get off the plane. That's going to be helpful. Not a terrible thing. As long as you're not yelling and doing anything like that. Run your phone if you need to. Always, document. Just say, well, I'm not doing anything, but if you want to call the police, fine. But I can't walk off your plane, and I'm not crawling off of it. So you have to know your rights, and you can be nice, but you have to say what you need. Definitely don't get off that plane until they've got your wheelchair there. Outside, look around. If you're in the front, kind of look around. Say, well, they can say, well, it's going to be there in a minute. We have to leave. No, I can't stand, so it wouldn't happen. I would collapse. And so I only did it one time where I got off. I had a cane. I sort of struggled because I do walk a little, but I can't maintain it. And it was terrible when I did that. I've learned my lesson. So learn from me. Know your rights. And when things go wrong, that's when you stop everything, ask for a supervisor, and go from there. I hope this helps.